Peace was good, everybody. This is After Elemental, coming to you with another podcast. This is going to be a series, actually, a podcast, talking about black male mental health. We hear a lot of this topic coming up, mental health in general, but this is going to be specifically tailored to us, and we're going to try to talk about some of the challenges we face and some of the techniques that we could use to address or improve our mental health. So I have two guests with me today. We're going to go down the line. They're going to introduce themselves, and we're going to talk a little bit about their background, and then we're going to get into this conversation. So let's go.
Good afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you're at. My name is Dominic Smith. I'm a program director for a drug prevention program and a restorative justice program. I work with youth ages 12 to 24, increasing it to 26 because we realize that population have issues as well. I've been in this field over 20 plus years, and I'm happy to be here today.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. It all depends on where you are in the world and what time the sun rises. My name is Abdul Kareem. I am an artist, entrepreneur, and I guess filmmaker. So I also have a degree in psychology, and I'm just here just to discuss mental health in the black community, especially with emphasis on black males.
Cool. Thank you for that. So can y'all tell me what mental health is in relationship to black men? Like, give me a little, any one of y'all can start. What is that?
Yeah, it's just wellness. We have our bodies that sometimes, you could have a cold or it could be sick and need some internal substance to heal it. It's the same thing that happens with our mental health. Sometimes we have things that are going on in our head that needs to be, checked and needs to be corrected. So mental health is wellness, is all a part of our well-being. So mental, what our thoughts like, what our sensations, and how do we go about having healthy thoughts, healthy decisions, and a healthy mind. So mental health is just wellness to me. How well are you? How well are you thinking? What the information that you're putting in? How are you reacting and dealing with the environment that we are in? And how do we what are we putting out into the world? Because our mind controls everything. If we don't have a sound mind, then we're not going to have a sound body, sound relationships, we're not going to be functioning sound in this society. So a healthy mind and a healthy mind is a healthy body.
I agree with everything he said. Mental health is just a check of the mind, the balance of the mind. What's going on with the mind? What's going on with the brain? Is it healthy? It's the same way if you got a cold, if you're sick, it's the same way as the mind is. So if it's unbalanced or if it's not right or it's unhealthy, those things could be deemed mental health. It could become mental health issues. So mental health is just a check of the mind of your mental and where you at as far as thinking, how you view things, how you look at life, how you evaluate things. It all has to be balanced in that form.
Nice. So you touched on it's like you could have a cold, right, for your body, and you have this cold of the mind, right? You have something that's affecting your mind. What are some of these side effects that we see? Can y'all just name some of the things that you see if somebody's mind is not right? Is it, it could be behavioral or different things, but can y'all just identify a few things that are kind of telltale signs?
Well, definitely some telltale signs is depression, feeling of loss, feeling of not having a future, feeling of not communicating, socializing properly. And how you cope with different situations. So having a healthy mind and having some of the symptoms of having unhealthy mind is the way you go about it, how you react to other things in this world, and how you deal with those things. Depression is something that's is real, and it does happen to black males, and especially within our communities. But if you don't have an outlet to check and know that you're depressed or there's something wrong, then, how would you know? So, I mean, you have to check those people who are mental health professionals to see if you are okay. And some people have a stigma with that and don't want to reveal or talk or let it low because maybe this misinterpreted thing of masculinity, and understanding that we are just human beings and sometimes we need help. We may be going through a mental health crisis, and it's okay to do that because that's just human beings. And when human beings go through problems, there are professionals that you can go to get help. So knowing how recognize if you have a peer or a friend that may have psychological or mental health breakdowns, know where you can go to get help, whether it be an internal group, a support group, or a working professional, so you can get help with those kind of things. You can expound upon those things of different types of mental health problems that people may go through. So that's just some of my experiences.
It's just, not a care for someone's life, extreme anger, hopelessness, very, I would say, very, very emotional. Not being able to really express yourself. For black males, that's something that we struggle with a lot. How to express ourselves, how to communicate, how to voice our opinion to someone without it becoming volatile. Depression is another thing where he spoke on, just being in a real hopeless state, mind state, like there's no improvement can be seen in the future. Those are just small signs of some mental health issues that I've encountered, especially with a lot of young people. As you get older, there's different type of mental health and trauma that you exhibit as you get older. But what I just covered is that, that younger generation period right there.
So you mentioned this word trauma, and it kind of sticks out to me because can trauma be the cause of a mental health situation? And if so, how?
Well, there's a thing called adverse childhood experience, which is trauma from an early age. So it's extreme trauma and over. So trauma can be, molestation, or it can be you getting shot, or it can be domestic violence in your households. Those traumas, lead to heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes for black male because it's a consistent and constant thing. Going out into our environment where we're at, it's almost like PTSD. Every day we're kind of not ducking shots, but there's a shootout every day. Every day there's a fight on the block. Every day, somebody's doing a sexual assault to a woman. So that's trauma. Is experiencing something that's changing, and some things could be life-changing every day, constant every day. So after a while, your body still starts to become numb. You start to become immune. This is why we can film a death. This is why we can film a fight without interjecting into it. Even though that person might lose his life, we're still going to film it. We're going to put it up there because that trauma we have become immune to. This is what's going on. So now we are immune to that feeling. Now we are immune to that emotion because we have gone over it continuously over and over again. And that's what we experience in our community.
Yeah, and I think the psychological term is when we have cognitive dissonance. So when your cognition, your mind is distant from the actual emotions and things that are going on around you. We have coping mechanisms, and when your coping mechanisms are breaking down and they don't work properly, and it just doesn't function, you shut them off. That's a problem. That's a mental health breakdown. So we have to know what it is, recognize it, and call it out when we see it.
Wow, yeah, that's a pretty good explanation, definition. I'm thinking about what you was talking about, trauma, and my experiences with it growing up, which I probably been through everything you mentioned. at some point in my life, depression, self-destructive behavior, not being able to express yourself. There are traumas that I think Black men go through that we don't talk about, right? So one of them, and I'm not speaking from my own personal experience, but I'm well acquainted with people who had this personal experience. There's sexual abuse of males that males don't talk about. And it's not necessarily by another male, it's by females from winning babies, right? And I had some situations where I had to confront mothers who would brag about what they would do to their babies, right? And it goes to that conversation of, you can't tell me what to do, this is my baby, and then you get cursed out. The other trauma that males don't really talk about, which I definitely know because it affected me, is being in a household being cursed out, right? When you cursing out your child, that is traumatic for your child, right? So your child is like feeling belittled and like they don't matter and embarrassed and emasculated because that's the words are vicious, the words cut. And I remember when I was a child and I was spoken to that way, it felt like I have no value, right? And then you internalize it and you tell yourself you don't have value, so then you become reckless. You become dangerous to your own self because you don't think you're worth anything. And these are the things these are the kind of conversations I want to kind of zone in on in this conversation, because how does these different traumas affect the minds of Black men? Like, we know that they manifest sometimes, but sometimes they don't. But the feeling that you get when you go through depression, when you go through sexual abuse and go through things, how does that, how can a man figure out, okay, what should I be doing, right? Y'all got anything to expand upon that?
Well, I would say a lot of people got to admit that they need help. That's the number one thing we're not saying, like, we need help. So a lot of people, if they're experiencing certain trauma, they react a different way. So in the hood, like, we kind of have glorified people that then killed 5 and 10 people, right? But we never looked at if they have mental health issues. We never looked at if they're schizophrenic or they're bipolar or whatever psychology, you want to label them. Like, they had some type of issue and some type of trauma to make them get to that point. So, also, when I was growing up, somebody would be called 730, meaning that they're crazy, right? But those people grew up, they had kids, and that it trickles down. So the first thing is we have to admit that we need help. In a Black household, what's happening in the house stays in the house. We never say anything about what's really going on in a household. Somebody might be doing X, Y, to Z. Somebody, uncle might be doing something. Like, it stays in the household. So that person is suffering until they get of age, and now they of age, they can release it however they want to release it. Whether it's go to the street and become a gang member, turn to a hitman, go to the army and say, hey, this is how I can release mine. We don't talk about those things, but we have to admit that there's an issue. Black people have to admit there's an issue. And that's something that we got to take ownership. We got to say, hey, I have a problem. How do I deal with this problem? Where can I go to get help? That's something that we have to start doing as Black people.
Yeah, and look into the professionals. We have some famous Black psychologists. Joy Leary, she's a great Black psychologist. She coined the phrase post-traumatic slave syndrome, and she speaks about the trauma it's been into Black people from the inception of this country, and she speaks about the trauma, that generational trauma that has been plaguing our communities and households. She's a brilliant Black psychologist, and you definitely check her out, look her up, see some of her books, research her, and learn. So how the medical field and how they build trauma and psychological problems in our medical field and medical course, but how in society we're like place, and not necessarily. People will say, why there's so many things happening in the black community, and there's a cause and there's an effect. So you have to understand what we're subjugated to and what we're experiencing and who we are as a people, and what we're just human beings. But just because we are in a social, a certain demographic and a certain status in this country, because of our skin color, race, and everything, there's things that go along with that. So understanding that, recognizing it, and calling it what it is, you understand some of the issues that we have psychologically, because there's never been a therapy session for those people who experience chattel slavery in America, going through segregation, going through Jim Crow, and going through police brutality, or all the other traumas that we see in our society and community. There's been no therapy sessions to fix some of the ills that go on in society, just as a human being, not just as a black person or white person or Korean or Asian, just as a human being functioning in a society and all the things that are happening. There's things that, as a human being, that needs to be fixed and correct, because shouldn't happen as a normal human being. So, especially in the black community and people of African descent, there's a certain type of institutional trauma that we all experience, and it needs to definitely be addressed.
I think this is making me think about normal, right? It makes me think about that for several reasons. Like you mentioned that what happens in the house stays in the house, right? That kind of reminds me of the no snitching thing, right? No snitching. But do we ever think about what that term means? Because sometimes the term could seem very vague, what happens in the house. But what are the effects? So let me point one out. What happens in the house stays in the house. The way that translates to me is it allows a perpetrator to continue to do what they're doing because you're never going to tell. Right? So just like you said, the person who murdered a whole bunch of people could be a sociopath, could be something, could be mentally ill, could be all these things. But as long as nobody says anything, the person is still out there killing. Right? So looking at our upbringing, our unique experience in America, I'm a person who studies slavery intensely. I have books that are kind of collectible books, right? And they talk about the psychology in slavery. Like PTSD, you mentioned PTSD. I believe it's kind of passed down. And it's through practice, it's through words, and sometimes it's unspoken. And the reason why I say that is people look at black people and they say, what's wrong with them, right? Outsiders I'm talking about, even some of us inside. What's wrong with black people? But if you understand, we use this term slavery, right? And it sounds like a simple word. But it's extremely complex, because when you study what the goal of slavery is, people say, oh, they just wanted to get free labor, blah, blah, blah. No, actually, the goal was you buy a batch of slaves, you work them till they drop dead, and then you buy another batch. That was the British model. And America said, we're going to force breed them and make more so we don't have to buy new batches. And then America and Britain started having problems, right? So what happens psychologically to a human being to see their father work to death, or see their mother work to death, or see them brutally beaten, or see them forcefully mating with somebody? There's something that happens in the mind, because we say mental health, mental illness, like, okay, you're mentally ill, here's a pill. That didn't come about because you took a drug. That came about because something happened to you.
Right, it's just trying to fix a problem and an issue. I mean, and this is documented. You can go downtown to Center Street. What is this? The African burial ground, where you saw remains of people of African descent that were buried, and their ligaments and their bones have indication that they were worked to death. So I mean, how do you heal from those types of traumas? How do you heal from those types of understanding that this would happen to a human being? And what's the protocol? What's the legwork? What's if you was a psychologist or a psychiatrist, what is the prescription to fix this issue, or this problem, this symptom? So, and African Americans have never been to a big therapist or a big place to heal from these traumas, these things that happen to our families, to our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, our great grandfathers. This happened in human history, and how do we heal from it? So this is some of the things with mental health issues, and those people who perpetuated those kind of things, and their cognitive dissonance of what had happened, and how do we heal from that? So we are traumatized people, but we are also resilient people because we healed from it. But we shouldn't have to do this all by ourselves. That there's mental health professionals that can help us with some of the things that we see in our community, in our society, that can be fixed, that can be corrected. But we need those resources, those professionals that can recognize it, label it, and fix it. So,
But
that's part of the problems that we see with the mental health problems within our community.
But the thing is, do they want to fix it, right? So they give so much money to outside countries, right? And the damages is right here, right, in their own household. So
it's HR 40.
So how can we, so to me it's almost like design trauma after a while. So after a while it's designed because you know the damage you have done. It's going to pass down from generation to generation, and it's no help in sight, right? So, and collectively as people, we are trying to address it. We are talking about it. We're reaching out for help. But a lot of this is economics, right? Because we need real professionals to address these issues. These are real issues you're talking about. You're talking about slavery, segregation, so the Willie Lynch, and even the education system, right? So there's so many factors and layers to this that it need more than just the people to fix this. Because it's like we're trying to solve a disease that was created by somebody, right? You have to go to what the source to ask, hey, what did you put in this batch to make this bad like this? So unless people be accountable, take accountability, and collectively come together to try to address this mental health, because mental health for Black people, this is a new word that we're talking about now. It's new now, you know what I'm saying? But it always been there, but it hasn't been a label. So
yeah, it's been there for a long time. But like I said, you have to label it and recognize it and call it out when you see it. And this pandemic kind of revealed a lot of things. We saw a lot of things coming to the surface that was always there. But now we see more of it. We see more prevalence of it because of another variable. And recognizing it and trying to correct it while we see it is definitely in a state of emergency that we've always been in, and we've been in for a long time. So we have to correct and fix it, or try to correct and fix it, and go to the root of why it was caused in the first place.
I wanna jump in because one, you mentioned HR 40, right? And I don't know if you're familiar with ADOS. ADOS, American Descendants Slavery. That's Tone and Yvette. And I've been following and checking out what they've been doing for a while, pushing the movement. But it goes back to what you said about, do they want to fix it, right? So I have this understanding, and I'm gonna throw it out there, and maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right, but a rapist rarely cares about the feelings of a person they rape. And a terrorist doesn't care about the people they bombed, right? They don't care. So is it a healthy thing for us to look for support from the descendants of people who did this stuff to us, or from a country who did this to us, knowing that that never happens?
Right.
Is it setting us up for a letdown?
Yeah, well, from my philosophy, my understanding is you can't correct the problem with the same consciousness that caused it. If you have someone who deliberately caused the problem and you looking for them to fix it, that's just like hitting a brick wall. It's like you can't. Although you have to have a truth like South Africa did, they had a truth and recognition of apartheid. You have to have the person who caused that problem first admit that they caused the problem, and from that you can start the healing. But if you have someone who doesn't admit it and doesn't take ownership of how they caused the problem, then you can never have healing. So again, to that philosophy, you can't solve the problems with the same consciousness that caused it. If you have a consciousness that's deliberately and continue to cause the same issues and problems and disruptions, then why would you try to look for them to fix it? So I think some of these problems that we have our own answers to, we can fix it for ourselves, for those mental health professionals that we have in our community and our society that recognize it, and they can label it and know the remedies to fix these issues. But you have those people who do know those problems, but they just don't want to fix it because they profited from those things. They profit in our dysfunction. They profit in all those the things that they will cause, but they continue to make their living or their power structure based off of that. So that's why they don't fix it.
Well, it's not I don't think that, no, we can't expect them to fix it, but it's holding them accountable.
Right.
And we can't let up off that. Because once we let up, that's saying that we're accepting what happened. Right? So that's saying everybody that died and sacrificed themselves for a cause, we okay with it. So at the end of the day, if you don't continue to say, hey, they need to be accountable, then it's just a whisper in the wind, because nobody's saying it anymore. So the more that we keep saying this, it's like talking about reparation. Cut the check. Where's our check at? That needs to be talked about. And anybody that's going against that, then you're not for the people. That's just how we have to look at it. And we cannot let up about holding people accountable. We can't just act like it's okay. We can forgive our people for doing things to us because it's designed like that, but we can't forgive the people that created that problem. My thing is, and I tell a lot of young kids I work with, do you hate your father for being on drugs, or you hate the person that created the drugs more? Right? So that's something for them to think about, that he didn't have a chance because it was already designed. So you need to take that motivation and turn it a different type of way. So more or less it's about not expecting a handout, but just making people accountable. You got to hold people accountable. It's just like if you're in a relationship and your spouse cheats, she has to be accountable. That's what we got to start telling people. They have to be accountable for whatever was done for creating this traumatic experience. Because like you said, it's going to take centuries and generations to actually change what's been done to us. But if we don't demand something, if we keep just accepting the small handouts or the tangible things or the symbolic things, then it's never really going to change.
That's big that you mentioned that, because I'm an avid reader, and I have my family. I have 3 children, myself and my wife. We have this book club, right? And every Sunday we talk about what we read. So we read all 5 of Dr. Claude Edison's books, right? And when you talk about the symbolic gestures, things that doesn't mean anything, so what, you got a mural painted? It doesn't bring any wealth to the community, right? It doesn't change the condition necessarily of any black people in that community other than they have a mural, right? You put a statue up. Does that statue generate anything other than something for somebody to look at, right? So going on in statues, I wanted to mention this because I think it's important, and things come to me I gotta say it in a moment. So going through trauma, sometimes you suffer from being triggered, right? And I'm gonna say one of the personal triggers for me, and people be like, oh, it's too much, whatever, but the people who engage in this terroristic, horrific behavior is on our currency. So every time I pull the money out, I gotta see this person, right? That's traumatic for me. And then if I go to 59th Street, I get to see a statue of Christopher Columbus, who killed 3 million people. And he's a hero. To me, he's a sociopath, but he's a hero to these people who put this statue up, and I gotta see it. And when I'm in the elevator and there's a woman there and she's clutching her purse, you know, because I'm in the elevator and I'm thinking about the history of what happened to us, I should be scared, right? But these are the things that are like triggers to me, and sometimes I gotta step myself back and like, yo, you're going a little far. Just take a breath. But as a black man, knowing how they tore us apart in front of the community, if we were strong, you know, we can't have a say, we can't have no power. In a sense, this is what it looks like, right? This is what somebody else determined. Not to say we don't, but I have those traumas to think about, like, yo, everything's against me. I got a target on my back as a black man.
Like you're going to be lynched.
Yeah, like I'm going to be lynched. Yeah, it's just that kind of thing.
Just kind of crazy that they just passed the law of an anti-lynching bill. And the anti-lynching bill has just been passed within a couple of months ago.
Yeah, just
passed. And you think about the trauma and how long have we been on this country, and how long has this trauma been going on of the fear of being lynched, of when you speak up or being strong. Every black leader that I looked up to has been killed. So if you think about, like I said, keep on destroying our institutions, destroying that the people that look up and fight are our heroes. It's been trauma, and we're still going through just trauma. The things that help us heal and help us move forward, they try to destroy. So you know, the healers in our society, in our community, have always been dismantled, and that's always been a problem. So when you think it's a cause and an effect, you definitely see the cause, and you definitely see the visual effects of things happening. So, you know, how do we heal from this? How do we move forward? And then this is what we're speaking about, the mental health of not only just black males, but this is our society. You know, because we're just a fragment of the broader society. And if you know about our culture, you know, we're like the movement. You know, black culture is everywhere on this planet, but you know, it's still a traumatic culture. We're still healing from a lot of things. So you know, but you know, we're very resilient, but we still need help.
Yeah. We need a lot of help, man. I think like it's like I say, it's economics helps. That's a huge part, man.
Yeah.
You look at the school system. I think they got the most they have is 2 social workers, if that, in a whole school of 200 to 300 kids, right?
Right.
And these kids got all type of issues going on, all type of things happening in the household, community, and everything. And then you only got 2 social workers. So, do you really want to help it, or are you really just attempting to act like you're helping it? So you know what I'm saying. So like I said, it's a design system, and us as people gotta
they're putting band-aids on bullet wounds, and that's always been a problem. We need more healers, and more than just band-aids. We need some real first aid in some hospitals to feel some of this trauma.
I remember, you know, I was part of the Nation of Islam when I was little, right? And then I became a Muslim after leaving the Nation of Islam. And I remember them always saying, why would you expect your enemy to educate your children on how to be free, right? They would always say that. And when I got to school, I used to have some issues with history, right? So if your history starts at, oh, y'all were slaves and then now you're not, I was always like, well, what were we before that? And it's like, there's no history. So part of, again, the frustration and the trauma is like, I had to actively, over the course of 20 years, seek out my history. Because it's not taught at all in school. They'll say, oh, some of y'all was from Africa. Okay, that's not good enough for me, because now I want to know the name of my tribe. I want to know what tribe I'm from. But the things that happened to us got that information twisted and lost, right? So there's a disconnect to say, well, see, I don't care about this area or that area, because I'm from here. Well, you was from somewhere before here, right? But you don't know it. And that's frustrating in itself. Once I started to learn about who I was, it helped me. Because then I carried myself a different way. Once I started to understand that I needed therapy, I had to come to that understanding, because, y'all mentioned earlier, therapy is not a thing that's really advocated for, right? It's not something that people encourage. But my wife actually told me, you need to go, because there was just too much trauma. Like I was very mistrusting, and not to say I'm very trusting now, but I was mistrusting of everything, because when you get hurt and you get traumatized, you develop this protection kind of idea that, at any given moment, somebody could do this to me, and I gotta be ready at any given moment. And you live in traumatized, like you're in a war zone.
Right, it's coping mechanism.
Yeah. I was living like that.
It's just a survival tactic. I mean, we built in our brain, just as a human being, we build coping mechanisms. If you have anything that happens, there's a defense that you're supposed to have. If you have if you look at any animal or any living creature, they protect themselves to survive. And human beings are not immune to that. We protect ourselves. We put up coping mechanisms. We do things to survive. Whether it be emotional disconnect, a psychological block, just to survive and push forward. So human beings we're resilient, we're resourceful, but at the same time, we're still human beings, and sometimes we can miss the mark on helping our minds heal. So we have to seek out help when we need it, when we recognize it, that, we do need help to fix some of these things, if we recognize those things.
And that's why, mental health is big for people coming out of prison. Right, because it's the whole fight or flight thing, right? In jail, you're not going nowhere. So it's either you become what the system is, or you succumb to the system, right?
You confront yourself.
So you're looking at constant trauma in the institutional system, right? Violent situations like cutting, stabbing, even raping. That's traumatic experience. There's many people that went in one way and came out a whole totally different another way, right? So me doing time, right? I went to the boxes. The box is almost like a mat in the bathroom, right? So it's 23 and 1, 23 in, 1 hour out, right? So that time traumatically, of course, did something to me. So if I was to sit here and say, hey, it didn't affect me, of course it did, because you almost go insane in a situation like that, right? So thank God I didn't do a lot of time, but I'm talking about people that have done 20, 30 years in that type of setting. You cannot come out the same person, right? So it should be a special fund, money put aside to helping those people reestablish themselves back into society, right? Because there's so much damage done, right, to that individual.
But you also look at Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, of how the industrial prison complex took a place of, again, racism, economic, and institutional place of slavery. So why is the system built this way? And why the cause and the effect of the trauma is put on people. So in her book, she's talking about the new Jim Crow was the industrial prison complex. Why brown and black folks being disproportionately imprisoned more so than other people in the society? Chinese, European, Samoan, anybody. Why are black people being more subjected to prisons than any other ethnicity? So again, it's institutional. and we have to look at the whole system and try to heal from that. You know, there's an institution behind these things. There's a cause and effect. It's not just made up something out of the blue. There's a system, a protocol set up. Why is it? So we have to ask those questions why, and heal from those.
The interesting thing that you're bringing up, so this is going to be probably part of another conversation, but I actually wrote down those questions and I sought the answers out, and I started to understand what was at play. So as I said before, when a person is a terrorist, person is a rapist, person is a sociopath, they want to be the king. They want to be on the top of the mountain. So that means you can't have black men making babies because you want to make babies with all the women. You can't. It's a weird, selfish me thing, right? So no, I got to be the winner. You can't have it. Oh, he can't be equal to me. He can't be. He's not allowed to, because I'm in control. So looking at this.
That comes from another black psychologist. This is Naeem Akbar. He has the psychopathic racial personality.
Right.
And he talks about the narcissism.
Oh, I was about to say about the narcissism.
Yeah.
Because that sound like a narcissist.
Listen,
white supremacy.
A slave couldn't tell the slave master they was wrong. He'd get killed.
Right.
Even if the slave master's wrong. So going into the answer of why the prison industrial complex, why was it set up? So I researched this stuff, and I'm just going to fire this one off. After the slaves was let off the plantation, I'm going to put that in quotes, they passed these blacks laws, right? If you don't have a certain amount of money in your pocket, you're a vagrant, you go to jail. If you wait for the train, and there's 10 of you waiting for the train, that's illegal, 10 black people can't meet, you go to jail. They found any way to land black people in jail, because before, you didn't really have jails. The slave master issued the punishment, right? So now they got these jails because the slaves are free, and somehow we're degenerates. Somehow they labeled us that. So we got to lock them up. And once they lock the slaves up, the jail leased the slaves to the same plantation. They walked off. Yeah. It was called the prison leasing program.
Convict leasing.
So prisons, and I talk to my students about this, prisons, the new Jim Crow, prisons is the new slavery. I'm going to name the companies. They probably going to be, it's knowledge. IKEA furniture, slaves. Victoria's Secrets, slaves. Patriot missiles, made by slaves. Idaho potatoes is a prison business.
Corecraft.
So,
Corecraft.
no, people don't understand the money. So think about it. Slavery was you work people to death, you didn't have to pay them. What happens in prison? You violate them for a crime they probably didn't commit, and guess what? Now they got to work for nothing.
Okay.
So that's what this conversation is. Slavery changed hands from the individuals to the state.
To the state and corporation.
That's what happened. So I studied this. So this is the reason why it looks like it's so hard for us to win, because it's designed for us to fit in the role that was cast by somebody else. Right. When you see a movie, the actors follow a script, right? Mm-hmm. Who wrote the script? You see a black guy acting like a thug, who wrote that script? Is that the only roles they're writing for us? Why he can't be the hero? You see, like it's things that's interesting that I see in society, but we're gonna say that for another conversation. I want to give you a chance to anything you want to say wrapping up, because it's about that time. We're gonna have multiple parts on this. But anything you want to say wrapping up?
Yeah, just always check your wellness, check your mental health. If you have a support group, if you have members of your community, if you have mental health professionals, always check yourself, because you want to check yourself before you wreck yourself. So check on your mental health, check on your wellness, and be well. Be cognitive of the people around you, your mental health and your well-being, and the mental health and well-being of your family and friends.
I want to say, hey, check my book out, The True Success Story of an Underachiever. You can get it at Lulu Publishing, LULU Publishing.com. I want to say also, just admit you need help. Like, it's no being ashamed of you needing help. Don't be ashamed to say, yo, I need, somebody in my corner. I can't do it alone. Like, we have to break this stigma of men can't express themselves anymore. And don't let anybody shame you of asking for help or what you've been through. Understand that. Also, I want to say to the young people, there is a brighter light at the end of the tunnel, and y'all are tomorrow leaders. You just have to understand today.
And I want to wrap up because, like you said, there shouldn't be shame with mental health. So I put it out there. Like I've been in therapy for 10 years. I probably should have been in there way sooner than I started because of the trauma. Like I was diagnosed with PTSD, severe PTSD, right? So now that I've been through 10 years of it, I can have this conversation with you. Because it felt shameful to say, yo, my parents didn't feed me. I felt like I wasn't a human, right? It felt, I couldn't tell my teachers, I couldn't say to anybody, yo, I'm getting beat every day. And I'm getting cursed out every day. And sometimes I'm unconscious when I get beat. Like, I couldn't have that conversation. Now I can have that conversation because you feel like, you feel less than. And it made, for me, what it did was it made me, I'm not going to say I was out there causing trouble, but it kind of made me physically violent in a sense. Like I could turn on the drop of a hat because, and if they saw me do something, they'll be like, I told you he was crazy, but nobody knew what was happening to me. So if I exploded on somebody in a moment who didn't deserve me to explode on them, it was like they was the straw that broke the camel back that day. So they just caught the wrath that day. And it's like, yo, why is he like that? Yo, he just crazy. So I'm gonna put that out there to be like, to say somebody's crazy now is kind of like a cop-out, right? Something happened to make a person the way they are. Try to help them. I mean, and you don't have to try to save the world, but when I see somebody going through stuff, it's different now for me now, right? If I see somebody going off on a train, I'm gonna try to talk to them and like figure out like, yo, you okay, man? Yo, what you need, man? Let me try to help you. Because I was that person when I was young. And people stayed away from me most of the time, like, yo, he just crazy, don't talk to that dude. But this trauma that's unaddressed, that's unspoken, that feels shameful. You didn't do the act, something happened to you, but somehow you feel guilty because it happened to you. And now you're like, I can't never tell them, they're gonna laugh at me, they're gonna feel this way. And I used to think these thoughts, and now I understand now, I talk to my children all the time, like, listen, man, I'm gonna give you this number, I want you to call this therapist in case you don't feel comfortable talking to me. I was not allowed to talk to my parents. I didn't have a voice as a kid. People say you talk real loud because I was not allowed to talk. Like, can you imagine that? You can't even speak. So that's how I was raised. And then after I got older, I found out that my parents was abused too. So it's a self-perpetuating thing. It's a cycle, it's a chain. But yes, in today's world, you shouldn't feel ashamed about needing help. There's tons of resources out there. Nobody's gonna laugh at you or embarrass you because you're not feeling okay right now. You're feeling angry or whatever. Nobody's gonna shame you for that. Just get the help. So at the end of this, you're gonna see some links to some free mental health resources and other mental health resources. But I wanna just thank y'all too for coming in and having this conversation because, and I said we're gonna have more, but we need to have these conversations for real because we don't wanna be in a state of damage and then have children and damage them and it just keeps happening. Like I tell kids, when I talk to them, I said, if you was in a business and you had a robot factory and you're in the business of making robots and every robot comes out with a defect, when do you look at yourself and say, is it something I did to make every single robot have a defect? And I say that to kids because I want them to think about the challenge of being a parent. Sometimes parents is on, it's like a walk by faith. You're just trying to get point A to point B, but you're not analyzing what you're doing and seeing how you impacting your own children. And sometimes you're damaging them. You know, so yeah, this is a great conversation. But thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope you gained something from this. I hope you got a little insight from this. And I'm gonna have your back. You're probably gonna be regulars on this. Just to have more conversations about it and to just advocate for us getting the help we need.
To feel better. We're going to be better. If we know better, we're going to do better, and we're going to help others do better. We want the success of everyone and the wellness of everyone. So if you're going through any type of problems or any type of situation, know that there's people that you can reach out to, and you don't have to do it by yourself.
And there's free help out there. So there's definitely free help. So take advantage, kings and queens, and heal yourself.
That's it. Thank you for tuning in. After Elemental, we got Dominic, Abdul Mufti, and thank you, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.